The blood on her hands had long dried by the time Lawson stumbled into Cimarron, New Mexico, though the wounds across her body were still fresh enough to make every step agony. She had escaped 3 days ago from the gang that took her outside Santa Fe, and she had walked through desert and scrubland with nothing but the torn dress on her back, and a determination to survive that burned hotter than the September sun beating down on her shoulders. The year was 1878, and women who survived what she had survived rarely made it far enough to tell their stories. Rose collapsed near the water trough outside the Silver Creek Saloon, her vision swimming with exhaustion and pain. She could hear voices around her, the shuffle of boots, but everything seemed distant and dreamlike. Strong hands lifted her, and she tried to fight, tried to scream, but her body had nothing left to give. When she woke, she was lying on a clean bed in a small room with whitewashed walls. Sunlight streamed through a window covered with simple cotton curtains. For a moment, panic seized her, the memory of waking in that other place, that terrible place where they had hurt her again and again. But this room smelled of soap and dried herbs, not blood and whiskey. "You are awake." The voice was female, gentle. Rose turned her head carefully to see an older woman with silver-streaked brown hair sitting in a chair beside the bed. "My name is Margaret. You are at Dr. Hamilton's house. You are safe here. Safe." Rose did not know if she would ever feel that word in her bones again, but she nodded weakly. Margaret brought her water and helped her drink, and Rose realized she was wearing a clean nightgown, that someone had washed the dirt and blood from her skin. "The cowboy who brought you in said you collapsed by the saloon," Margaret said quietly. "Nathan Rourke. He is a good man. He has been checking on you every day. 3 days. Rose had been unconscious for 3 days. Margaret explained that Dr. Hamilton had tended her wounds, that they had been infected but were now being treated. She did not ask what had happened, and Rose was grateful for that mercy. On the 4th day, Rose was strong enough to sit up and take some broth. On the 5th day, she could stand and walk slowly around the room. The scars were healing, but she could see them when Margaret helped her change the bandages. Burns on her arms from where they had held hot irons to her skin. Cuts across her back from a whip. A deep gash on her thigh from a knife. Each one was a memory she wished she could forget. On the 6th day, there was a knock on the door, and Margaret looked at Rose for permission before opening it. A man stood in the doorway, tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that fell almost to his shoulders beneath his wide-brimmed hat. His eyes were a striking shade of gray-green, and they held a gentleness that seemed at odds with the gun belt at his hip and the hardness of his jawline. "Miss Lawson," he said, his voice low and respectful. "My name is Nathan Rourke. I am the one who found you. I wanted to make sure you were recovering well." Rose found herself unable to speak for a moment. There was something in the way he looked at her, not with pity or disgust, but with a quiet understanding that made her throat tighten. "Thank you," she managed, "for helping me." Nathan stepped into the room but kept his distance as though he understood that closeness might frighten her. "No thanks needed. I am glad you are doing better. If you need anything at all, Margaret knows how to find me. I work at the Broken Arrow Ranch just outside town." He left before she could say more, but Rose found herself thinking about him long after he was gone. The days began to blur together as Rose healed. Margaret was kind and patient, never pushing her to talk about what had happened. Dr. Hamilton checked her wounds regularly, his professional manner making the examinations easier to bear. But it was Nathan's visits that Rose found herself anticipating. He came every few days, always polite, always keeping a respectful distance. Sometimes he brought small gifts, wildflowers he had picked on his ride into town, a book he thought she might enjoy, a perfectly smooth stone from the creek. "I thought you might like to see something beautiful," he said one afternoon, handing her a bouquet of purple asters. "The world has got more beauty than ugliness in it, even when it does not feel that way." Rose took the flowers, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. "Thank you, Nathan." "That is kind of you." "It is not kindness," he said quietly. "It is just the truth." As September turned to October, Rose grew stronger. She could walk without pain, could dress herself, could help Margaret with small tasks around the house. But the scars remained, and she found herself hiding them beneath long sleeves and high collars, ashamed of what they represented. One evening, Nathan arrived with a proposition. "There is a barn dance this Saturday," he said. "I know it might be too soon, but I thought if you wanted to get out of this house, see some of the town, I would be honored to escort you. No pressure, of course. I just thought you might like to be around people again." Rose's first instinct was to refuse. The thought of people looking at her, of their questions and their pity, made her stomach turn. But something in Nathan's expression made her pause. He was not offering out of pity. He was offering because he wanted to spend time with her. "I would like that," she heard herself say. "But I do not know if I can dance yet." "Then we will just listen to the music and eat too much pie," Nathan said with a smile that transformed his serious face. "That sounds like a fine evening to me." Saturday arrived with clear skies and a cool breeze that promised winter was on its way. Rose borrowed a dress from Margaret, a simple blue cotton with long sleeves that covered her arms. She tied her auburn hair back with a ribbon and looked at herself in the small mirror. She looked thinner than she had before, her cheekbones more prominent, her eyes haunted. But she was alive. Nathan arrived at sunset, wearing clean clothes and looking nervous in a way that Rose found endearing. He offered her his arm, and they walked slowly toward the barn at the edge of town where lanterns were already glowing and music was spilling out into the evening air. The barn was full of people, families and couples and children running between the adults. A fiddle player and a guitarist sat on a makeshift stage, playing lively tunes that made Rose's feet want to move despite her nervousness. Nathan led her to the refreshment table and brought her a cup of sweet cider and a slice of apple pie. "Nathan Rourke, you actually came to a social event," a voice said, and Rose turned to see a man about Nathan's age grinning at them. "I thought you had sworn off dances forever." "Samuel, this is Miss Rose Lawson," Nathan said, his hand moving protectively to Rose's elbow. "Rose, this is Samuel Tucker. We have worked together at the Broken Arrow for 5 years now." Samuel tipped his hat to Rose, his expression friendly. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Lawson." Any woman who can get Nathan to come to a dance must be something special. Rose felt her cheeks warm, but before she could respond, a woman appeared at Samuel's side, linking her arm through his. "Stop embarrassing him, Sam. Can you not see the poor man is already nervous enough?" The evening passed more pleasantly than Rose had anticipated. Nathan introduced her to several people, but he never left her side, and he seemed to sense when the attention became too much. They sat on a bench outside the barn for a while, listening to the music drift out into the night, and Nathan told her about his work at the ranch, about the horses he trained and the wide New Mexico sky he loved. "I came out here from Missouri 5 years ago," he said. "My parents died of fever when I was 17, and there was nothing left for me there. I wanted to see the West to make something of myself. It has been hard work, but I love it here. This land gets into your blood." "I came from Kansas," Rose said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken about her past. "I was traveling to California with a wagon train. We were attacked outside Santa Fe. Most of the people were killed. A few of us were taken." She stopped, her voice catching. Nathan did not press her. He just sat beside her, solid and present, and after a moment he said, "You do not have to tell me anything you are not ready to tell." But Rose found that she wanted to tell him. Not everything, not the worst of it, but enough. "They kept me for 2 months. They hurt me. They—" She could not finish the sentence, but she did not need to. Nathan's jaw tightened and his hands clenched into fists on his knees. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I am so sorry that happened to you. I escaped when they were drunk one night," Rose continued. "I just ran. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. I walked for 3 days before I found Cimarron." "You are the strongest person I have ever met," Nathan said, turning to look at her. In the moonlight his eyes were dark and intense. "What you survived, what you did to escape, that takes more courage than most people have in their entire lives." Rose shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "I do not feel strong, I feel broken." "You are not broken," Nathan said firmly. "You are scarred, yes, but scars mean you survived. They mean you fought and you won." They sat in silence for a long time, and when Nathan finally walked her home, Rose felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Nathan visited often, and gradually, Rose began to see more of Cimarron. She helped Margaret with her baking, delivering bread and pies to families around town. She met the schoolteacher, Miss Clara Bennett, who offered to lend her books from the small school library. She began to feel less like a victim and more like a person again. But at night, the nightmares came. She would wake gasping, her body drenched in sweat, the phantom feeling of hands on her skin making her want to claw herself free of her own body. Margaret would hear her and come to sit with her, bringing tea and speaking in soothing tones until Rose could breathe again. One night in early November, the nightmares were particularly bad. Rose woke screaming, and by the time Margaret came running, Rose was huddled in the corner of her room, shaking uncontrollably. Margaret did her best, but Rose could not seem to calm down. Her mind was trapped in that place, in those moments of pain and terror. "I am going to get Nathan," Margaret said finally. "He will help." Rose wanted to protest, wanted to say she did not want him to see her like this, but she could not form the words. Margaret left and Rose sat in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees, trying to remember how to breathe. Nathan arrived within 20 minutes, still pulling on his coat. He must have ridden hard from the ranch. He knelt a few feet away from Rose, not touching her, just making himself present. "Rose," he said gently, "it is Nathan. You are in Cimarron, you are safe. No one is going to hurt you here." Rose looked at him, her eyes wild. "I can still feel it. I can still feel everything they did to me." "I know," Nathan said. "I know it feels real right now, but it is not happening anymore. You are here. You are safe." He kept talking to her, his voice low and steady, telling her about the ranch, about the new colt that had been born that week, about the way the cottonwood trees along the creek were turning gold. Slowly, so slowly, Rose felt herself coming back to the present. Her breathing eased. The shaking subsided. "Can I come closer?" Nathan asked. When Rose nodded, he moved to sit beside her, still not touching her. "You are doing so well, Rose. You are healing. This is part of it. The nightmares, the fear, it is your mind trying to process what happened, but it will get better. I promise you it will get better." "How do you know?" Rose whispered. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When I was 16, I was taken by a group of raiders. They thought they could ransom me to my parents. They kept me for a week, and in that week they made sure I understood how powerless I was. They beat me. They burned me with cigarettes. They broke 2 of my fingers just to hear me scream." Rose turned to look at him, shocked. Nathan met her eyes steadily. "My father managed to track them down and get me back, but for years afterward, I had nightmares. I would wake up fighting, thinking I was still there. It took a long time, but eventually, the nightmares came less often. Eventually, I could think about it without feeling like I was drowning. You will get there too, Rose. I know you will. I did not know, Rose said softly. I am sorry that happened to you. And I am sorry for what happened to you, Nathan replied. But we are both here now. We both survived, and that means something. He stayed with her until dawn, just sitting beside her, his presence a comfort she had not known she needed. When morning light began to filter through the window, Rose finally felt steady enough to stand. Thank you, she said, for coming, for understanding. Always, Nathan said simply. After that night, something shifted between them. There was a deeper understanding, a connection forged from shared pain. Nathan began teaching Rose to ride, taking her out on gentle trails where she could feel the wind in her hair and the sun on her face. She began to smile more, to laugh at his dry humor, and the way he talked to the horses as though they could understand every word. One afternoon in late November, they were riding back from the creek when Nathan said, "There is something I want to show you. It is a bit of a ride, but I think you will like it." They rode for another hour, climbing into the foothills where juniper and pinyon pine dotted the landscape. Finally, Nathan led her to a small clearing that overlooked the entire valley. The view was breathtaking, the mountains rising in the distance, the town of Cimarron a small cluster of buildings far below. "This is my favorite place in the world," Nathan said, dismounting and helping Rose down. "I come here when I need to think, when I need to remember why I love this land." They sat on a flat rock, and Nathan pulled out a canteen and some biscuits Margaret had packed. For a while they just sat in companionable silence, watching an eagle soar on the thermals far above. "Rose," Nathan said finally, his voice uncertain, "I need to tell you something. I know the timing might not be right, and I know you might not feel the same way, but I cannot keep it to myself anymore." Rose turned to look at him, her heart suddenly racing. "I am falling in love with you," Nathan said, meeting her eyes. "Maybe I have been since the day I found you. I know you have been through hell, and I know you might not be ready for this, but I needed you to know. You are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever met, and I would be honored if you would let me court you properly." Rose felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "Nathan, I do not know if I can be what you need. I am damaged. I am scarred. There are parts of me that might never heal." Nathan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "Rose, we are all scarred in one way or another. That does not make you damaged. That makes you human. And I am not asking you to be perfect. I am just asking you to let me be here with you while we both heal." "I think I am falling in love with you too," Rose whispered. "It terrifies me. But it is true." Nathan's face broke into a smile that made him look years younger. "Then that is enough. We will take this as slow as you need. No pressure. No expectations. Just you and me figuring this out together." As winter settled over Cimarron, Rose and Nathan's relationship deepened. They spent hours together, talking about everything and nothing. Nathan was patient, never pushing for more than Rose was ready to give. When he held her hand, it was with reverence. When he kissed her cheek goodnight, it was with tenderness that made her heart ache, but there were still hard days. Days when Rose could not bear to be touched, when the memories were too fresh and the fear too strong. On those days, Nathan would sit across from her, just being present, reminding her that she was safe. One cold December evening, Rose and Nathan were sitting by the fire in Margaret's parlor. They had been reading together, but Rose had set her book aside, her mind too restless to focus. She had been thinking about something for weeks now, and she knew she needed to talk to Nathan about it. "Nathan," she said quietly, "there is something I need to do, something I have been avoiding." He set his own book aside and gave her his full attention. "What is it?" "The scars," Rose said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have never seen them, not really. I keep them covered all the time. But if we are going to build something together, if this is going to be real, you need to see what they did to me. You need to know what you are getting." "Rose, you do not have to show me anything you are not ready to share," Nathan said gently. "I know," Rose said, "but I need to. For myself. I need to stop hiding." She stood up, her hands trembling slightly, and slowly began to unbutton the cuffs of her long-sleeved blouse. Nathan remained seated, his expression serious and attentive. Rose pushed the sleeves up to her elbows, revealing the burn scars that marred her forearms. Some were round, the size of a cigar end. Others were longer, irregular shapes from hot metal. Nathan stood slowly and came to her. He looked at her arms for a long moment, and Rose braced herself for disgust, for pity. But when he reached out, his touch was infinitely gentle. He took her right arm and bent his head, pressing his lips to the worst of the scars on her wrist. "You survived this," he whispered against her skin. Rose's breath hitched as he moved to another scar, kissing it with the same tenderness. "You survived this." He worked his way up her arm, kissing each burn, each mark, and with each touch he repeated those 3 words. "You survived this." By the time he reached her shoulder, Rose was crying, but they were healing tears, cleansing tears. Nathan looked at her, his own eyes bright with emotion. "Can I?" he asked, gesturing to the buttons at the back of her dress. Rose nodded, unable to speak. She turned around, and Nathan carefully unfastened the top buttons, just enough to reveal her upper back. The scars from the whip were still pink and raised, crisscrossing her shoulder blades in a pattern of cruelty. Nathan drew in a sharp breath, and for a moment, Rose regretted showing him. But then she felt his lips on the nape of her neck, on each line of scarred tissue. "You survived this," he said, his voice breaking. "God, Rose, you survived all of this." She turned back to face him, and he cupped her face in his hands. "You are so beautiful," he said fiercely. "Not in spite of these scars, but with them. They are part of your story. They are proof of your strength, and I am in awe of you." Rose kissed him then, really kissed him for the first time. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I love every part of you." "I love you too," Rose whispered back. Christmas came to Cimarron with snow and celebration. Rose had been living with Margaret for nearly 4 months now, and she had become a real part of the community. She helped organize the church Christmas service, baked cookies with the children at the school, and felt more at home than she had since leaving Kansas. On Christmas morning, Nathan arrived early with a gift wrapped in brown paper. Rose had made him a thick scarf, knitted during the long evenings by the fire, and she watched nervously as he opened her gift first. "It is perfect," he said, wrapping it around his neck immediately. "I will wear it every day." Rose opened her gift to find a beautiful leather journal with her initials stamped on the cover. "I thought you might want to write," Nathan said. "Margaret mentioned you used to keep a journal before. I thought maybe it would help writing things down." Rose traced the letters with her finger, touched beyond words. "Thank you. It is perfect." They spent the day with Margaret and some of the other families in town, eating too much and singing carols, and Rose felt something she had thought she might never feel again: peace. The new year of 1879 arrived with cold winds and the promise of change. Nathan and Rose's relationship continued to deepen, and by February, everyone in Cimarron knew they were courting. Nathan was a regular fixture at Margaret's house, and Rose had met his friends from the ranch, had even visited the Broken Arrow to see where he worked. One evening in early March, Nathan took Rose back to his favorite spot in the foothills. Spring was beginning to show itself in the new green grass and the buds on the trees. They sat on their rock, watching the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Rose," Nathan said, his voice nervous in a way she rarely heard. "I have been thinking about our future, about what we both want." Rose's heart began to pound. She turned to face him fully. "I know we have only been courting for a few months," Nathan continued, "but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you. I want to spend every day for the rest of my life showing you how much I love you. Rose Lawson, will you marry me?" He pulled a simple gold band from his pocket, and Rose saw that his hands were shaking. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Yes, Nathan, I will marry you." The joy that lit up Nathan's face was something Rose knew she would remember for the rest of her life. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her with a passion that made her dizzy. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. "I promise I will spend every day making you happy," Nathan said. "I promise I will always keep you safe." "I know you will," Rose said. "And I promise to love you with everything I have." They were married in April in the small church in Cimarron with half the town in attendance. Margaret had helped Rose make a simple white dress, and Clara had woven wildflowers into her hair. When Rose walked down the aisle and saw Nathan waiting for her, his expression full of love and wonder, she knew she had finally found her home. The ranch foreman at the Broken Arrow, a gruff but kind-hearted man named William, had offered Nathan and Rose a small cabin on the ranch property as a wedding gift. It needed work, but Nathan had spent weeks fixing it up, and when he carried Rose over the threshold on their wedding night, it was cozy and warm and theirs. That night, Rose was nervous. It was their wedding night, and despite all the healing she had done, the thought of intimacy still frightened her. Nathan seemed to sense her fear because he took her hands gently and said, "We do not have to do anything you are not ready for. I meant what I said, no pressure, no expectations. Just tell me what you need." Rose took a deep breath. "I want this, I want you, but I might need you to be patient with me." "Always," Nathan promised. He was infinitely patient, infinitely gentle. He asked permission before every touch, every kiss. When Rose tensed up, he stopped immediately, giving her time to breathe, to remember where she was and who she was with. And slowly, with Nathan's tenderness and love, Rose began to reclaim her body as her own. What had been a source of pain and trauma became something beautiful, something healing. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the soft light of the oil lamp, and Rose traced the scars on Nathan's chest, the ones he had shown her weeks ago. The cigarette burns, the marks from where they had beaten him. They were both scarred, both survivors, and somehow that made their love even more precious. "I never thought I would feel whole again," Rose whispered. "But with you, I do." Nathan kissed her forehead. "You were always whole, Rose. You just needed time to see it." Life at the Broken Arrow was good. Rose thrived in the wide open spaces, and she discovered a talent for working with the horses that surprised everyone, including herself. Nathan taught her everything he knew, and soon she was helping him train the young colts and fillies. The work was hard but satisfying, and Rose loved the feeling of accomplishment at the end of each day. She also continued her friendship with Margaret, visiting town regularly to help with baking and to attend the women's group at the church. She became close with Clara, the schoolteacher, and with Samuel's wife, Elizabeth. She had built a life here, a community, and it felt like a miracle after everything she had lost. The nightmares still came sometimes, but they were less frequent now. And when they did come, Nathan was there, holding her, reminding her that she was safe. Some nights they would lie awake talking until dawn, sharing their fears and their dreams. Nathan told her about his plans to eventually own his own ranch, to breed horses that people would come from all over to buy. Rose told him about her dream of writing a book someday, of putting all her experiences down on paper so that other survivors would know they were not alone. "You should do it," Nathan said. "You have a story worth telling." "Maybe someday," Rose replied. "When I am ready." Summer arrived with blazing heat and long golden days. Rose and Nathan fell into a rhythm of work and love, of laughter and quiet moments. They would ride out to their special spot in the foothills on Sunday afternoons, bringing a picnic and spending hours just being together. One evening in July, Rose realized she had missed her monthly courses. At first, she thought it was just the heat or the hard work, but when a second month passed, she knew. She was carrying Nathan's child. She told him one evening after supper, nervous about how he would react. They had talked about children, but always in the abstract, something for the future. But Nathan's face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen, and he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as though he could not quite believe it. "Rose, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Rose asked, suddenly uncertain. "Happy," Nathan set her down carefully, as though she might break. "I am the happiest man alive. You are giving me everything I ever wanted." The pregnancy was not easy. Rose had difficult mornings and exhaustion that left her sleeping 12 hours a night. But Nathan was attentive and caring, taking over her chores and making sure she rested. Margaret came out to the ranch regularly to check on her, bringing herbal teas and advice. As Rose's belly grew, she found herself thinking about the future in ways she never had before. She was going to be a mother. She was going to bring a child into this world, a child who would know love and safety, and everything she had thought she might never have again. In late February of 1880, after a long and difficult labor, Rose gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James after Nathan's father, and when Nathan held his son for the first time, Rose saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered. "Rose, he is absolutely perfect. We made him," Rose said, exhausted but elated. "We made something beautiful." James was a good baby, curious and alert, with Nathan's gray-green eyes and Rose's auburn hair. Watching Nathan with their son made Rose fall even deeper in love with her husband. He was patient and gentle, changing diapers and walking the floor during fussy nights without complaint. He would talk to James in that same soothing voice he used with the horses, and Rose would watch them and feel her heart swell with gratitude. The years that followed were full and rich. Rose and Nathan worked side by side, raising James and building their life together. When James was 2, Rose became pregnant again, and this time she gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah. 2 years after that came another son, Michael, and their little cabin became a home filled with laughter and love and the controlled chaos of young children. In 1885, Nathan's dream finally came true. William, the ranch foreman, decided to retire and move back east to live with his daughter, and he offered to sell Nathan a portion of the Broken Arrow land at a price he could afford. With the money they had saved, and a loan from the bank, Nathan and Rose bought 300 acres and started their own ranch. They called it the Survivor's Hope Ranch, and when people asked about the unusual name, Rose would smile and say it was a reminder that no matter how dark things got, there was always hope for something better. The ranch thrived. Nathan's reputation as a horse trainer spread, and soon they were getting orders from all over New Mexico and beyond. Rose managed the books and helped with the training, and she also finally began writing her book. She would sit at the kitchen table in the evenings after the children were in bed, filling page after page in the journal Nathan had given her all those years ago. When the book was finished, She sent it to a publisher in Chicago, not really expecting anything. But 6 months later, she received a letter saying they wanted to publish it. Surviving the Darkness, a true account of captivity and healing in the New Mexico Territory, was published in 1888, and while it was not a bestseller, it found its audience. Rose received letters from women all over the country who had survived similar traumas, who told her that her story had given them hope. Life was not perfect. There were hard years when drought killed the grass and they struggled to feed the horses. There were childhood illnesses that kept Rose up at night, praying over fevered brows. There were moments when the old nightmares returned, when Rose would wake gasping and Nathan would hold her until the sun came up. But there was also joy. There were Christmas mornings with 3 excited children tearing into presents. There were summer picnics by the creek, all 5 of them splashing in the cool water. There were quiet evenings on the porch, Rose and Nathan watching the sunset while the children played in the yard, and feeling grateful for every single day they had together. James grew into a thoughtful, serious boy who loved the horses as much as his parents did. Sarah was spirited and fearless, always climbing trees and bringing home injured animals to nurse back to health. Michael was the family comedian, always making everyone laugh with his antics and his quick wit. As the years passed and the children grew, Rose and Nathan grew older together, their love deepening with time. They would still ride out to their special spot in the foothills whenever they could steal a few hours away, and they would sit on that same rock and remember that winter day when Nathan had proposed. "You ever regret it?" Rose asked one afternoon in 1895. They were both in their 40s now, their hair showing threads of gray. "Marrying me, taking on all my baggage," Nathan looked at her as though she had said something absurd. "Regret you? Rose, you are the best thing that ever happened to me, you and our children and this life we built together. I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard parts," Rose pressed. "Especially not the hard parts," Nathan said firmly. "The hard parts made us who we are. They taught us how to be strong, how to survive, how to love each other through anything. I am grateful for all of it, Rose." Every single moment. Rose leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors. Their children grew and eventually started families of their own. James married a kind woman named Emma and took over much of the day-to-day operations of the ranch. Sarah became a veterinarian, one of the first women in the territory to do so, and opened a practice in Cimarron. Michael moved to Santa Fe to work in law, but he came home often, bringing his wife and children for long visits. Rose continued to write, publishing 2 more books over the years. Nathan continued to work with the horses, though he moved a bit slower now, his joints protesting the hard work of his youth. But they were happy, surrounded by the family they had built and the life they had created together. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, their children and grandchildren threw them a party at the ranch. The house was full of people and noise and love, and at one point, Rose and Nathan slipped away to stand on the porch, watching the celebration through the window. 30 years, Rose said wonderingly. "Sometimes it feels like just yesterday, and sometimes it feels like forever." "Forever sounds about right," Nathan said, pulling her close. "I plan on spending many more forevers with you." They were both in their 60s now, their bodies marked by age and work and life. But when Nathan looked at Rose, he still saw that young woman who had stumbled into Cimarron all those years ago, brave and broken and determined to survive. And when Rose looked at Nathan, she still saw the cowboy who had saved her, not just from death, but from despair. As the party continued inside, as their children and grandchildren laughed and celebrated, Rose and Nathan stood together in the gathering dusk, two survivors who had found each other and built something beautiful from the ashes of their pain. "I love you," Rose said, the words as true and powerful as they had been 30 years ago. "I love you too," Nathan replied, kissing her with the same tenderness he had shown her from the very beginning. "Always have, always will." They went back inside to join their family, hands linked, hearts full, knowing that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. They had survived the darkness and found the light. They had taken their scars and turned them into stories of strength. They had loved and been loved, and in the end, that was everything. The years continued to pass, gentle and full. Rose and Nathan watched their grandchildren grow, saw some of them develop the same love for horses that ran in their blood. They took long walks together around the ranch, moving slowly but contentedly, pointing out changes and remembering the years of work that had built everything around them. Rose's books continued to find new readers with each generation, and she received letters well into her 70s from women who told her that her words had helped them heal. She would read these letters to Nathan in the evenings, and he would squeeze her hand and tell her how proud he was of her. Nathan's horses were now known throughout the West, and several had even won prizes at shows and competitions. But what he was most proud of was that James had taken the training philosophy Nathan had developed and was teaching it to his own children, passing down a legacy of gentleness and patience with animals. One autumn evening in 1915, when Rose was 67 and Nathan was 69, they sat together on their porch watching the sun set over the mountains they had loved for so long. Nathan had been feeling tired lately, and Rose worried about him, but he always insisted he was fine. "Rose," he said softly, taking her hand, "if something happens to me, I need you to know something." "Nothing is going to happen," Rose said firmly, even though fear clutched at her heart. "We both know we are not going to live forever," Nathan said gently, "and I need to say this while I can. These years with you have been the greatest gift of my life. You saved me just as much as I saved you. You gave me purpose and love and a family. You gave me everything." "Nathan," Rose said, tears filling her eyes. "I am not afraid," he continued. "I am not afraid because I know I lived a good life. I loved a good woman. I raised good children, and when my time comes I will have no regrets. Promise me you will stay with me for a long time yet," Rose said, her voice breaking. "I will stay as long as I can," Nathan promised. "But whenever that day comes, I need you to keep living. Keep writing. Keep telling our story. Keep loving our family. Promise me, Rose." "I promise," Rose whispered, and they sat together holding hands as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Nathan lived for 6 more years. They were good years, full of quiet contentment and deep love. He was there when their first great-grandchild was born. He was there for James and Emma's 25th anniversary. He was there to see Sarah publish her own book on veterinary medicine. He was there for all the moments that mattered. He died peacefully in the spring of 1921 in his sleep, with Rose beside him. He was 75 years old, and he had lived a full and beautiful life. Rose grieved deeply, but she kept her promise. She kept living. She kept writing. She kept telling their story to anyone who would listen. She spent time with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she found joy in watching the family she and Nathan had created continue to grow and thrive. She lived for another 12 years, and when she died in 1933 at the age of 85, it was surrounded by 3 generations of family who loved her. Her last words were, "Tell Nathan I am coming home." They buried her next to Nathan on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under the wide New Mexico sky they had both loved so much. The headstone read, Rose Lawson Rourke, 1848–1933. Survivor, writer, mother, beloved wife, and underneath. She survived, she loved, she lived. The survivor's Hope Ranch continued for generations, passed down through the family, each generation adding their own chapter to the story. And in the house, carefully preserved and passed down like a treasured heirloom, was Rose's original journal, the one Nathan had given her on their first Christmas together. Inside the cover, in Nathan's strong handwriting, was a note he had written but never shown her until after his death, when she found it tucked among his things. It read, "To Rose, the bravest person I have ever known, your scars tell a story of survival. Your strength inspires me every day. Your love has given my life meaning. Whatever happens, know that loving you has been the greatest honor of my life. You survived, and I am so grateful you did. Forever yours, Nathan." And so their story ended, as all stories must, but the love they shared and the legacy they built lived on, a testament to the power of healing, the strength of survival, and the transforming grace of true love. Two scarred souls who found each other in the harsh beauty of the Wild West and built something eternal from their broken pieces. They had survived, they had loved, and in the end, that was everything that mattered.